The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to be getting underway in a couple of minutes. Just waiting for a few more people to join, and I'll get my screen shared very shortly. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen and hear me now. I'll just double check that and then we can get underway very soon. All right, looks like everyone is in and the audio and video are working. So let's get started. Thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Josh Osborne, and this is the CI Tools Weekly Q&A webinar. I'm the product manager for the CI Tools here in Central Innovation in Auckland, and this weekly session is to go through some sort of frequently asked questions about the tools, things that people don't know how to do or aren't aware of existing and that sort of thing. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through a handful of 3 or 4 things that have come through on support recently this week, and then I'll probably will look at the electrical tool. 2 of the questions were about the electrical tool, so I might have a look in depth in the electrical tool once I've covered off the first couple of things for today's session. But if you do have any questions, please enter those in the in the questions panel on your GoToWebinar thingybob, and I will try to get to those during this session. If you have any suggestions for future webinars or anything like that, please do enter those in as well. I'll be checking on the questions panel at the end, although today I don't have a huge amount of actual questions from customers to go over. So if you send them through any time, I'll try and get to them before our half hour or so is up. The webinar will be recorded today, and that'll be available up on MyCI about this time next week. But thanks for joining. This is ArcCAD 24 that we'll be working in, and the first thing that I want to look at is the Lintel Object, which you might have heard of if you are a ArcCAD Select customer in Australia or New Zealand, or if you're a CI Tools Premium customer outside of Australia and New Zealand. You may have come across this object. So I'm just going to load up my CI Select library, which is what you get. It's a big library of objects that we make that are included for you as part of your Select benefits. So I'm just going to load the library for that. And what this object does is it lets us automatically set up a lintel object based on our windows and doors. Now this has been, the functionality for this to work has been built into the Doors+Windows tool since I think about ArcCAD 22. So if you're using an older version, you won't see them there. But if you're using something in the last 2 or 3 ArcCAD versions, you should see all this functionality here. So what we're going to do is I've already got, as you can see in this project, I've already got some windows and doors placed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and grab one of these windows, and I'll do it in floor plan because that's where I'm going to place my lintel. So I'll select one of these windows here and go into the settings for it. And obviously you can see my window has been set up how I want it to. And if I click in the settings, the list of settings pages, and go up to configuration, you'll see that there's this button next to all of the stuff about the sizing and style. There's also a button here called copy for lintel. And that's what we want to use. So I'm just going to hit the copy for lintel button and then do nothing else inside this. So I've made no changes to the window at all. Then I'm going to go and grab my object tool. And I'm going to get the lintel. Now I can't remember exactly where in the library it is, so I'm just going to search for lintel. And this is it here. So it's called Timber Lintel NZ3604 number 1982. So that's the object ID is 1982. And we can find out where it was now. So in the select library under the structural section, and then go to the lintel section here. So I've got my 3604 lintel selected, and you can see in here it's drawing a sort of a default 3D view of it and a 2D view there. And you can see that it's set up with some settings in here, window head and height and the opening and all that sort of thing. These are just the default settings, but I want the settings of that actual window that I had selected. So I'm going to hit the paste from door window option. And as soon as I do that, you'll see all of the settings change to match up with what that window was set to. So you can see the 1800 is showing for the width there. It's brought in the ID and all that sort of thing. So just copying from your window or door and then pasting into the object does pretty much all you need for the initial setup of all those settings. And now I can just hit OK and place this lintel object. I'm going to put it in the center here. Whoops, I am placing on the wrong floor. Let's try that again. Okay, so it has placed by the left side, so I'm just going to drag it across so it actually is in the center. Is that right? Just eyeballing that. Let me do this properly. There we go. Right, so you can see I've got my lintel object place, and we've got a bit of a mess here because the ID of it is displaying over top of the ID for my window. So let's just go and flick that off. So that you can see the lintel label properly. All right, so at the moment it's showing just the ID 102, which is what that was set to, and it's got a simple floor plan view there. So what I can do is I can go back into the settings now and make some changes if I want to. So obviously it's brought in the settings for the opening itself over here, but there's plenty of other control over how you want it to show as well. So you can choose what kind of lintel it is, whether it's a 3604 spec one or one that you have had specifically engineered for this window. So you can set that there. You can set the timber grade, set whether you want it to use this 3604 or a different kind of fixing schedule, or again, a custom specific design option here. And then if I go into the calculator section, you can also set how it should be set up to suit what you're building in at the moment. So you can set what the structure is, all of the sort of settings that you would expect to be able to do from this sort of thing. Set your framing size, set your pitch, all that sort of stuff, and various other options, wind zones. We can choose that again here, and we also have some attribute settings to set how it actually displays. So I haven't changed anything there, so I'm just going to hit that. The other thing that you can do with it as well is set the way that it displays. So at the moment, obviously, it's showing just the ID. But if I go into the model view options, you can go in here and go to the CI Select library. And under the labels page here, you'll see that there are settings for various types of labels that are in the Select library. And lintels is one of those. So you can see it's set to ID only at the moment. So if I click on that, I'm just going to change that to show everything. But obviously, you can choose any of these combinations. And I'll hit OK on that. And you can see now it's got the full labeling available in the Lintel object. And that will show in 3D with a little dotted line thing as well, so that you have a nice and easy to size and set up lintel object. So you can now go through and do that with each of your windows as well. So you can come to the next window and do the same process again. Whoops. Deselect that. So you can go into the settings again. Process is exactly the same for this one. Go to the configuration setting. Copy the data for the lintel. And then choose our lintel object and paste in those settings. So paste from door window, you can see that ID updates and so do the dimensions. And then we can place this window, so lintel. So you can go through adding all of these lintels as you go, or go through and do them all at the end by copying and pasting the settings one at a time. Probably one of the things that a lot of you are thinking is can we automate that? At the moment, the way that it works is just through the copying and pasting system and placing an extra object, but that is something that has been raised. So if that's something that you'll be interested in, please do let me know, because we're always keen to find out if just one person requests something, it's a little bit hard to tell if that's something that a lot of people are interested in us working on. So if that's something that might be useful to you, it'll be good to know about that. So that's the lintel object, and it's under the CI Select library, structural lintels, and it's called Timber Lintel NC3604 1982. So you can use that in 23 and 24. That should be available. All right, that's the lintel object. The next thing I wanted to look at was extruding a shape. This is something that someone asked us about recently today, and so I'm just going to very quickly show you how the Objective tool works with extruding a shape. And the way this works is that you draw the shape that you want to extrude first using the Fill tool, and then you extrude it. So I'm just going to draw up, it's fine, draw up a shape that I want to extrude. Obviously this can be anything at all. Select your shape and go to the CI Tools menu, Objective, and then say New Profile. So we're making a new extruded profile. We're going to set it to be an extrusion type, and then we just need to give it a name. I'm going to save it in the embedded library, but you don't need to. If you don't want to, you can export it. And then I'm going to leave both of these settings on here. So we're going to place a new extrusion once this is done, and we're going to delete the fill because we don't need it anymore. So I'm just going to hit OK. Once I do that, it's going to bring up a little pen cursor here, and it wants me to click on the profile anchor point. So I'm going to click here, and then it will, what it's doing now is it's saving the extrusion object into the embedded library. And it looks like it may have placed one on a nonsense story again. Yep. So now what I can do, I'm using my extrusion tool in my toolbox now, and this will be added if you use the CI Tools work environment, but you can add it to your toolbox manually in the same way that you add any of our tools to your toolbox. I can show you that shortly if you haven't seen that before. But essentially, using the extrusion tool, I just click to place, and then I get very similar controls to what you would get in a similar sort of element. So you can draw a polyline style draw method. So we can draw a straight segment here, then we can add a curve, then we can go back to straight, but we can change the Z value of the node. So let's make that 600. And then just click again on the endpoint to place, and obviously that's gone on a different story, but if we go to 3D, we should be able to see the path that we just drew. My computer's running a little bit slowly today because it's on battery power, sorry. I think it was just off to the side. Excuse me while I find this element. It's on the roof story, of course it is. So you can see the placed element, and we're going to show this in 3D, and then we'll zoom to it so that you can see what it looks like. So there we go. So there's the extruded shape. So you can see, if I look at the end here, you can see that it is in the shape of the fill that I drew, and it's been extruded along that sort of inner corner point there. So you can see that that is the consistent point across there. Starts off flat in a straight line, then does the curve, then it jumps up 500 mil, as I set it to, and then drops back down again to 100 mil below where it started. So obviously using this, you can make pretty much whatever extruded shape you want. A lot of people use this to do handrails and that sort of thing. So you can just go through and draw up the shape of your handrail and then turn it into a profile and draw the line as you want it to be. I'll just go over that again quickly just so that you can see how it worked. So select your fill tool, draw the shape that you want to extrude. Select it and go CI Tools, Objective, New Profile, set it as an extrusion and give it a name. and then hit OK and set your anchor point for the profile. And then you'll get put onto the Extrusion tool automatically here, but if not, you can just go and select it. And if you look in the settings for this, you can see that our two extrusions that we created are both available here, so you can flick between any of the ones that you've made. And then we can go through and draw our shape. So we set the Z value of the point that we're clicking and go through and just draw it however we want it to look. So that one's just going to be flat. And the other thing that you can do with this is that you can draw a polyline. So if you've already drawn up the shape of your path with sort of construction lines or something using polylines, you can just select your extrusion and space click on that line instead, and that will automatically draw an extrusion along that path. So now if I go back to 3D, you should see all of those looking roughly like you would expect. So you can see our sort of pizza slice shape. This is the one that traced the path, and this is the one that we drew manually. So obviously it gives you quite a lot of control over obviously how the extruded shape itself is drawn, but also you can trace it through whatever you need it to. And it's using the that anchor point as the line that guides it through the path there, so you can sometimes get into odd situations. So you can see here it's made a little strange dimple there because it's turned in on itself at a point that's actually inside where the reference point is, so it looks a little bit odd. So just be careful when you are setting your anchor point that you choose something generally sort of to the bottom left or something like that outside of the shape, so that you get something sensible when you do get it to turn corners and that sort of thing. Just something to watch out for. But yeah, that's the tool to let you draw an extruded profile. All right, the last thing that I wanted to show you was just a quick one on the electrical tool. And that was just, had someone asking this week about drawing a certain kind of wall plate that wasn't in the library by default. So going to the electrical tool, and you go and browse through here looking for what kind of thing you want to go with. Let's go with a PowerPoint, and you can see it defaults to having two sockets on it, both with switches. We can look at the PowerPoint settings here, and one of the things that you can do here, which may not be obvious, is that obviously we have the two PowerPoints set up at the moment, but we can change the way that works. So I'm just going to turn off the chain here so that I can modify both PowerPoints separately. And I'm going to set PowerPoint 1, I'm going to set that to be a switch beside. And then I'm going to choose PowerPoint 2 and say it has no switch. So you can use this system to go through and customize your wall plate to look whatever way you want it to. You're not just stuck with whatever it looks like by default. So if you go through and find the PowerPoint or the light switch or something, and it doesn't look exactly the way that you want it to, or it's not in the configuration you need it to, in almost all of these wall plate objects, you can just go into the PowerPoints, or in the case of switches settings here, and change them to work the way that you want them to. So let's make this have 3 switches on it. Once I do that, you can see there's now 3 individual switches here, and then we can go through and change the way these are set up. Obviously, changing the wiring on them, it doesn't look any different in 2D, but the symbol for them will be different. So that's just something that might not be obvious if you've been using the electrical tool, that you can just go through and customize a lot of the ways that these look. These are obviously the NZ Australia ones, but the same applies to any of the other regional settings as well. So if I come into the UK settings and go to the UK PowerPoint, the same will apply here as well. So you can go through to PowerPoints and set the way you want that to work as well. So you can see that obviously that was a very bad choice of spacing, but you get the idea. You can go through and customize it to make it look however you need it to. So that was the main things that I wanted to cover that came in from support this week, but I see there's a couple of questions, so I'm just going to look through there and see what we have. Where can you find the Lintel library? Yes, so it is available to all Select members. If you're an ArchiCAD Select member in New Zealand and Australia, you'll need to download the CI Select library. It's called. It used to be called the Essentials library, and it's called that for ArchiCAD 23, but in 24 it's called the CI Select library, and you can download that from MyCI. I don't have my browser open at the moment, so I can't show it, but if you log into MyCI and go to your MySelect benefits page there, you will see one of the options that's available to you is the select library, and that will give you, it's a pretty hefty LCF file, and it has, at the moment, it has in the region of, I think, 800 different objects in it. There's quite a lot in there to get through. So you can just load that up in your object, in your library manager, or you could copy their file into your ArchiCAD Library 24 folder so that it's just always loaded in ArchiCAD, either way. But once you have that loaded up, then you can then just go into your object tool and use anything that's in it. But in this case, what we are using is CI Select Library 24, Structural, and then Lintels, and the Lintel object is here. Can the lintel be scheduled as with other beams? The lintel is an object, so no, it can't. You would need to have a schedule. If you want it to be scheduled with beams as well, you would need to create a schedule that scheduled both objects and beams together, which might be a little difficult. So probably if you wanted to schedule the lintels, you'd be better off just scheduling them by themselves and then sticking that schedule together with your beams on your layout sheet. But that's another possibility of a thing that we could look at adapting it to some extent in future, because that seems like the kind of thing that would make sense. Yeah, I'd be interested actually to find out a little bit. I'll get back to you after this, a little bit more about how you would like that schedule to look, though, because yeah, that would be interesting. And then yeah, so be able to make a bill of materials without making a separate lintel schedule. Definitely. So I might get in touch with you later and just find out a little bit more about how you do schedule those currently, so that we can figure out what we would do to make that work for you in future. So it'd be good to see sort of an example of what you do currently and that sort of thing. All right. Got a question here about showing a window in multiple walls. So I think what you're asking here is, can you get a single window to show in two different walls because it's a window that's involved in a renovation? And no, you can't do that. When you draw a window in ArchiCAD, it's not a independent entity. It is part of the wall. It's sort of it's an opening of the wall is what it's classified as, but it is definitely included. It is a piece of the wall. So you can't have a single window that is in multiple walls because it only ever can belong to one wall at once. So if you're doing renovations and stuff and you want a window to show in different statuses, you will just have to place two windows, one in each of your walls in that way, and then make sure that the renovation settings are set up so that so that they show in the correct views. But yes, that does get quite tricky. But just because of the way that windows and doors work in ArchiCAD, and that they are sort of subcomponents of the walls themselves, it just won't let you do something like that, no. Yes, the lintel, I will go over the lintel one more time before we finish up. So one thing I should note, which I didn't actually say in the beginning, was you will need to be using the CI Tools Doors and Windows objects, which in New Zealand probably all of you are doing, but in Australia you may not be doing that. The setting for the copy and paste option is only available in our window and door. Obviously you can still use the object for other doors and windows as well. You just won't be able to automatically send the settings across using the copy paste system. But if you are using CI Tools, Windows or Doors, just select them, go into the settings, wait for your computer, and you want to go to the configuration tab. So it's right up at the top here, above everything else. Go to configuration, and then it's on the top right here, copy for lintel. So just hit that. Nothing will happen when you do that. It won't say settings copied or anything like that. It just does it. You hit the button, then you can bail out of there and go into your object tool. Find the lintel either by going through to structural and then lintels and then selecting it, or by searching for the word lintel. Doesn't really matter which way you do it. And then in the settings for your lintel, press the paste from door window option, and that will bring in the settings of the window or door that you copied from. And then you just need to go through and make any calculation changes that you might need to make on that if yours is different than the default is. We tried to set the default to be sort of one of the more common things that you probably will be setting, but be worth checking before you place those anyway. And then you can just hit OK, and this is just an object, so you can now place it wherever you want and then move it into place. Like that. And then you can control the way those labels work and everything like that. And because it's in a model view option, you can have them set to show in certain views and disappear in other views and that sort of thing. All right, so that was the lintel object. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please feel free to send those through to the support desk, which is nz.support@centralinnovation.com, or just log into MyCI and go to the My Support section there. Either way, we'll let you log a ticket with our support team, and they can either help you out or ask me, and I'll get in touch with you instead. And if you do have any other suggestions for things to cover in these webinars, that would be much appreciated as well. Just send through an email or something saying, hey, idea for webinar topic or something like that, and I'll go through and see if we can cover it at next week's session. But thanks everyone for your time, and I will catch you at the next one.